Time to check in with Dr. Joe Schwarcz. He is host, of course, of the Dr. Joe Show here on CJAD, Sundays at 3, and director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. And Joe, we left off last week before talking about something which, when I saw these two together, I thought, where are we going with this? And it's about tomatoes and watermelon to cheer you up. What's this about?
Right. The kind of thing that drives me crazy, I see an article in a newspaper with the headline, "Move over Prozac. Science is now looking at an unexpected source for fighting depression, tomatoes and watermelons." Okay? Well, you can imagine that captures people's attention because depression, of course, is a significant issue, and many people have the symptoms of that. So anytime that you see a study that somehow seems to treat that with something as simple as tomato and watermelon, you think you better look into it. So, of course, I do look into it. I look up the actual study, which is very different from what the headline suggests. First of all, the study was done on mice. And as we have said so many times, humans are not giant mice. So you always have to be, somewhat careful about extrapolating.
Yeah.
So what they did in this particular case is they did feed extract of tomato and watermelon to the mice. And then they examined the hypothalamus. That's a part of the brain that is important in memory and learning and for emotional stability. And they found that there were more new connections being made in the brain, in the hypothalamus, in response to the tomato and watermelon. So that was interesting. Now, to test whether or not this has any practical effect, what they did was they took mice, and male mice, about 60 of them, and they put them into some stressful situation. And that's sort of a common procedure, when, especially in psychological studies, where they first stress mice and then they try to see what can be done to alleviate the stress. And you can stress mice in various ways, none of which are very pleasant. You put them into tanks where they have to swim, or you put them in a cage next to a snake. So, these are stressful things. And so they took these stressed mice, and they did a randomized placebo experiment where half of the mice were given a placebo, and the other half received lycopene supplements. Now, lycopene is the red pigment that we have in tomatoes and watermelon, so that's where that connection comes in.
Okay.
And they described the results as being striking. That mice treated with lycopene were noticeably more social and even showed a renewed interest in a sugar-water mixture. This is something that they normally love. But the stressed mice stayed away from the sugar-water mixture. But when they were given the lycopene supplement, they went back to enjoying the sugared water.
That's nice.
So that's kind of interesting. Now, of course, the question that we have to ask, being scientifically minded, is what was the dose of lycopene that was given to these mice? Well, they were given 20 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And if you want to know what that translates to in humans, that's the equivalent of 21 tomatoes and 14 cups of watermelon per day. Now, I don't think that you can convince even a depressed person to consume 21 tomatoes and 14 cups of watermelon. You might be able to convince them to take a lycopene pill. But lycopene in a pure form, in the doses that were given to the mice, is toxic to humans. So, therefore, this really doesn't mean very much. Sure, if you enjoy eating tomatoes and watermelon, especially today, of course, people would like to eat a cold watermelon. By all means, go ahead. But these headlines that now there's a new antidepressant on the market and that Prozac should move over, this is totally unrealistic. But unfortunately, we see this in the lay press all the time, and of course on social media, when some study done in rodents is then totally twisted out of proportion and made to sound like a miracle.
again.
So, no, Prozac does not need to move over when you're talking about an antidepressant.
I just thought, when I saw watermelon, I'm like, who doesn't like eating watermelon? And the more you eat, it's the happier you get. But of course, this has nothing to do with that.
No.
Okay.
But even the people who love watermelon, I think, would find it a challenge to eat 14 cups of it.
Yeah. But what a great challenge that would be, Joe, right?
Yeah.
To see just how much watermelon you can eat.
There probably is a TikTok challenge like that out there.
Or should be, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, so don't look to tomatoes and watermelon to cure depression. I want to ask you, and I just saw this yesterday, and I wonder if you'd seen it or heard, there's been so much talk about those weight loss drugs now, like Wegovy and Ozempic, and it seems every day another drug company is coming out with another delivery method, if you will. I think one now is once a month instead of once a week for an injection. Then we know someone else is working on a pill, which would be the first, so you don't even have to, inject yourself. Are we finding out anything harmful about this? We've heard about all the benefits. Have you heard anything about the potential harm in doing this?
Yeah, of course. I mean, any kind of medication will have side effects, and anyone who watches American TV at night and sees all those advertisements for prescription drugs will see that there's a litany of side effects that are always listed. And yes, there are side effects with the GLP-1 drugs, mostly gastrointestinal. Mm-hmm. And people get, upset stomach. In some cases, it can be serious because it causes food to stay in the stomach too long. And that can have all kinds of consequences.
Okay.
It's called gastroparesis, when the food isn't being squeezed out from the stomach into the intestine. And that can be serious, but it's very, very rare. The benefits of these drugs certainly outweigh any of the risk. But you mentioned about oral. There actually is an oral version. It's Ribelsis is the oral version of the GLP-1 agonist. And it is already on the market, but it's only indicated for the treatment of diabetes.
Right.
So, yes, the companies are working on oral versions that would treat obesity. And the drugs do work. I mean, there's no question about that. They cut down on obesity. There's a technique that many plastic surgeons use called cool sculpturing, where you actually cause people to lose weight using a technique that relies on freezing the abdomen.
Right.
And the demand for this has gone way down ever since these GLP-1 drugs were introduced. So there's no question that they work, but they really should be used only in the case of extreme obesity.
Okay.
These are not the drugs to be used for someone who wants to fit into that bikini and have to lose weight.
But of course, what we found out is that's exactly what so many people are using it for. But we'll leave that discussion for next week. And at the same time, Joe, I'll bring up the, according to a new study, I don't know where this came from, the new added benefits of using Viagra that have nothing to do with what you think. And that'll be next week.
I think bring up is the appropriate
Excellent
term to use for that.
Dr.
Right?
Joe Schwarcz. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.